Most people believe there is one set of financial rules for everyone. Work hard, earn honestly, pay your taxes, build your future. That belief feels natural, comfortable, almost sacred. But what if the real global economy doesn't work that way at all? What if behind the scenes, hidden from public view, the most powerful people on earth have built an invisible system designed specifically to protect their wealth from those very rules? And what if that system was accidentally exposed, not by governments or regulators, but by a quiet leak of files that cracked open one of the biggest secrets of modern history? The Panama Papers did not simply reveal corruption. They revealed an entire parallel world of finance that most people never knew existed, a world where presidents, billionaires, criminals, celebrities, and corporations quietly move their money through shell companies and offshore havens, protected by lawyers, banks, and secrecy laws. The question is not whether this system exists. The question is why it exists, how it grew so powerful, and whether anyone is truly capable of stopping it. Long before the Panama Papers ever made headlines, the foundations of this secret economy were already being laid. To understand it, we have to go back to the 20th century, when global finance began transforming at a speed that governments struggled to control. As nations rebuilt after war, wealth expanded across borders. Corporations went multinational, and money started flowing faster than any legal system could follow. Governments needed taxes to rebuild their economies. The wealthy, meanwhile, wanted protection from political instability, confiscation, and high taxation. Somewhere between those two forces, the offshore world was born. Small jurisdictions with limited natural resources discovered something more valuable than oil or gold: financial secrecy. Places like Switzerland, the Cayman Islands, Bermuda, Luxembourg, and Panama realized they could attract enormous amounts of foreign money by promising privacy, low taxes, and legal protections that shielded the true owners of assets. They built legal frameworks that allowed companies to exist on paper only, with no employees, no physical office, and no real business activity. These entities, known as shell companies, became the building blocks of the hidden economy. At first, this system served relatively simple purposes. Wealthy families protected assets from unstable governments. Businesses minimized taxes legally. Investors diversified across borders. But as the world became more interconnected, the offshore system grew far beyond its original intent. Criminal organizations discovered they could hide proceeds from trafficking and fraud. Politicians learned they could conceal bribes. Corporations found ways to shift profits to avoid taxes. Entire industries emerged to service this system. Specialized law firms, banks, accountants, and corporate service providers, whose job was not to grow wealth, but to make wealth disappear from public view. One of those firms sat quietly in Panama City for decades, almost unknown outside elite financial circles: Mossack Fonseca. Founded by Jürgen Mossack and Ramon Fonseca, the firm became one of the most prolific creators of offshore companies in the world. They did not steal money. They did not bribe officials themselves. They built the vehicles, thousands upon thousands of them. Their clients included politicians, tycoons, royal families, athletes, criminals, and global corporations. Each company was a mask, and the system worked because no single authority had the full picture. For years, everything remained hidden behind layers of legal protection. Then, in the middle of the second decade of the 21st century, something extraordinary happened. An anonymous source contacted a small newspaper in Germany called Süddeutsche Zeitung. The message was simple: I have data, a lot of data, more than any journalist could ever analyze alone. The source demanded anonymity and asked for one thing in return: that the truth be exposed. What followed was one of the largest journalistic collaborations in history. The data was shared with the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists. Reporters from across the world began examining more than 11 million documents, covering nearly 4 decades of financial activity. As journalists dug deeper, patterns began to emerge. The same firm, Mossack Fonseca, appeared again and again. The same structures, the same techniques, the same offshore havens. What initially looked like isolated cases slowly revealed a massive coordinated system. Shell companies registered in the British Virgin Islands, Panama, Seychelles, and other secrecy jurisdictions were being used by some of the most powerful people on Earth. The revelations were staggering. Heads of state, prime ministers, cabinet ministers, royal families, billionaires, organized crime figures, drug traffickers, celebrities, all linked through a web of offshore structures designed to conceal ownership and avoid scrutiny. Some of the arrangements were technically legal. Many were not. But all of them operated in the shadows, far from public oversight. As the story broke, governments scrambled. Banks issued statements. Politicians denied wrongdoing. But the documents told a different story. They showed how companies were created in hours with nominee directors and shareholders who existed only on paper. They showed how assets were transferred quietly from one jurisdiction to another. They showed how the wealthy insulated themselves from taxes, lawsuits, sanctions, and public accountability. The consequences came fast. Protests erupted in several countries. The Prime Minister of Iceland resigned after it was revealed he had hidden family wealth offshore. Investigations were launched across Europe, Latin America, and Asia. Governments recovered billions in unpaid taxes. But the deeper story was not about individual scandals. It was about the system itself. Because the system had not been built by criminals alone, it had been built with the cooperation of some of the most respected institutions in global finance. Major banks processed the transactions. Law firms designed the structures. Regulators often looked the other way. In some cases, governments themselves quietly benefited from the arrangement, attracting foreign capital while pretending to uphold transparency. Mossack Fonseca eventually shut down under the pressure, but the offshore world did not disappear with it. Other firms filled the gap. The incentives remained unchanged. Wealth still seeks protection. Governments still compete for capital. The structures remain legal in many jurisdictions. And the people who benefit most continue to have the resources to navigate the system. Years after the Panama Papers, more leaks followed. The Paradise Papers, the Pandora Papers, each one revealing new names, new schemes, new methods, each one confirming the same uncomfortable truth. The global economy is not designed for fairness. It is designed for those who understand the rules of secrecy. The real danger is not just that money is hidden, it is that power is hidden. When wealth escapes taxation, governments lose the ability to fund schools, hospitals, infrastructure, and social programs. When politicians hide assets, democracy weakens. When criminals move money freely, law enforcement falls behind. The offshore system does not simply protect wealth, it quietly reshapes the world. Some reforms have followed. International cooperation has improved. Transparency laws have been strengthened. Banks face stricter oversight. But every reform encounters resistance from the same interests that benefit from secrecy. And the architecture of offshore finance remains largely intact. So what does this mean for the future? It means that the story of the Panama Papers is not finished. It is a chapter in a much longer struggle over who controls wealth, who controls information, and who truly governs the global economy. There are three clear lessons from this story. First, financial systems are only as honest as the people who design and enforce them. Second, secrecy is power, and power always resists exposure. And third, transparency is not just a technical issue. It is a political battle that shapes the lives of billions. The warning is simple, but unsettling. As long as secrecy jurisdictions exist, as long as anonymous companies can be created, and as long as money can move faster than the law, the richest and most powerful will continue to operate by a different set of rules. The open question is whether public awareness, journalism, and political pressure will be strong enough to close that gap, or whether the next leak will simply reveal that the shadows have moved elsewhere. If you want to understand how money truly works in the modern world, this is only the beginning. And if you believe that sunlight is the best disinfectant, then stories like this deserve to be told, shared, and remembered. If you found this breakdown valuable, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who still believes the financial system plays fair.